Did you know that India's remeasured maritime boundary is a staggering 11,098 kilometers? Did you know that India's share in global shipbuilding capabilities is 1.2%? Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host Anil Padmanabhan. I don't know about you, but I was taken by complete surprise with the data I shared with you in the introduction. I had no idea that India was undercounting its maritime boundary by a staggering 40%. Worse, despite having such a huge maritime boundary, India's share in global shipbuilding capability is a mere footnote, a strategic blunder, if you ask me. Now, India wants to make up this gap in a hurry at that. It wants to grow its share in shipbuilding capability tenfold in the next 10 years. Yes, you heard right, 10 times the current proportion. The just presented union budget gave a leg up to this audacious ambition. But is it a case of too little too late? To answer this and more, I spoke to Arjun Chowgule of the Chowgule Group. They operate India's largest private sector owned shipyard in the country. I began by asking Arjun his thoughts on the government's measures in the union budget to kickstart shipbuilding in India.
The finance minister has announced a 25,000 crore maritime development fund, which on its own is a very large amount and will propel a lot of investment into the sector. However, in the budget speech is a little short on details in terms of how it's going to get allocated. We do expect that a substantial amount would go towards promoting shipbuilding activities as well as shipping activities. I think both are going to happen together and both are needed to be happening together. So these two industries in India will go parallel with one another. There's no way that the idea of a Viksit Bharat 2047, the idea of a Atmanirbhar Bharat, the idea of Gati Shakti is going to happen without both of these two very key industries. And really, you're going to be needing to match demand and supply. And that's really what we assume the Maritime Development Fund is going to do. From conversations within the ministry, from conversations with stakeholders of the industry, from discussions that we've had in various forums, in seminars, it does seem fairly consistent from the government in terms of what the plans are. They've listened to the industry, they've listened to all sides of the industry, they've listened to shipbuilders, they've listened to coastal ship owners, they've listened to port operators, they've listened to the international trading companies as well. So it's fairly balanced in that, and most importantly, they're very consistent.
Given the scale of India's ambition and the fact that we are starting at a very low point, is this corpus large enough?
Yes, see, the corpus is a large corpus. But with any type of investment, there is the investment in the infrastructure, there's a capital outlay, but then really it is a lot of it is execution. And particularly industries like shipbuilding, which are very project management based industries, execution is very key. Investing in a facility is one thing, but it's extremely important to pay close attention on a day-to-day basis to really what is happening on the ground, how is inventory being managed, how a process flow is happening, and what are deliveries looking like. At the end of the day, what is very important is not how many ships can we build, it's how many ships do we build. I think that's the most important thing. And that really is where the focus should be. So The corpus is large. It just depends now in how it's channeled, how it's directed, the type of facilities that come up, the type of managerial capabilities that are built up, and the type of skills that are built up to actually achieve the ambition of actually being one of the largest shipbuilding countries in the world. That depends on execution. So this is a fundamentally fantastic start. It is what is required. Without this, you cannot get to the other part. But there is still quite a way to go, and everybody has to come together towards that. It's the private sector will need to play a very crucial role towards that, and of course, the entire managerial talent base of the industry will need to play a very crucial role in this.
I asked you on the feasibility because at a recent seminar, a government official said the ambition was to grow India's shipbuilding share from current level of 1% to 10%. So given this start, which you said is a good start, the government support, does India have it in itself to achieve this kind of an ambition?
I mean, on the face of it, if you look at it in terms of the data that is there in India, yes, it does. The crucial point is going to be, see, if you're going from 1% to 10%, you're at the very least, you're expanding production 10 times. You're not doubling, you're not tripling, you're increasing 10 times over a period of 10 years. That's significant. Now, to do that, fundamentally, you need shore-based facilities, and you need new shore-based facilities to come up. These shore-based facilities for shipyards are not typically on the sea. It's actually typically by the river, near the mouth of the sea. So land availability over there needs to be looked at. The availability of land, the availability of large parcels of land to achieving this, that's going to be extremely important. Now, that needs to be arranged, and that's something that really can really only happen with government intervention, which is why in the budget also the Honorable Finance Minister has spoken about the development of shipbuilding clusters and various state maritime boards, particularly Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh, and Orissa have been looking very, very closely at, how do we develop shipbuilding clusters. So the cluster development is going to be important, and it's going to be important by the river, and so land availability is going to be extremely important. That's on the infrastructure part. The capital part we've already discussed with the Maritime Development Fund. I think generally India is a good investment destination, and I think there's a lot of capital from India itself that can be deployed towards this. So capital, I don't see to be the biggest concern over there. And then finally is the last leg, which is the most important leg in many regards. It's really on the execution capability, which then becomes about the people and the skills of the people. India has a tremendously large talent pool of dynamic young naval architects, engineers, production managers, and a very large workforce of skilled and semi-skilled workers, the welders, fitters, the shop floor workers. They all need to be integrated in this program, and they have to be the right systems adopted in which they work. So there India really stands out, and it has a tremendous advantage that many countries actually don't. India, I would say on the last part, actually has probably the biggest, if not the second biggest, talent pool available for this. So, I think a lot is there. We have a lot of the right ingredients. This is going to be hard. How do we get the initiative off the ground? And once we get the initiatives off the ground, really then how do we take it forward?
Shipbuilding also has a strategic advantage. The colonial powers managed to colonize the world leveraging their fleets. So China is probably one of the biggest fleets in the world. So, and given the geo fragmentation, geopolitics that we are witnessing, It's also very important for India to ensure what you said at the beginning, Atmanirbharta in shipbuilding, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's there's one thing which is Atmanirbharta in shipbuilding, but if you look at um, true self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and really having having your fate in your own hands. Uh, Shipbuilding and shipping and marine transportation plays a very crucial role in this. I mean, if you look at the statistics today, China contributes something like around 25-27% of global value added manufacturing. Um, on the shipbuilding side, last year, of all the new orders placed, 60% were captured by Chinese shipyards. That's very large. China today is really at around 50% of global shipbuilding capacity, and it's increasing. Usually at once you reach that level, it decreases, but China is increasing. Then when you look at the data also coming from China, who are the ones placing the orders? Yes, there are a lot of foreign companies placing orders on China, but majority of the orders on Chinese shipyards are coming from Chinese companies itself. So China is going to be one of the largest ship owning, is going to be the largest ship owning country in the world. In addition to this, it's going to continue to be the largest shipbuilding country in the world, and it already is the largest manufacturing country in the world. Now, when a country controls the manufacturing space to the level that China does, and will control marine logistics to the space that China does in terms of being the largest ship owning country in the world, you can understand the um, influence and power that the country can have in terms of global trade and also global supply chains. Now, to counter that, India also needs to up its game in terms of developing the shipping fleet. And in order to do that, it needs shipbuilding capacity. So, um, just from a geopolitical angle, I cannot see India. I think it would be a very this is a very large risk for India, and India does need to do both of this: increase the supply of ships and increase the capability of the shipyards and the capacities of the shipyards.
If we were to look at the private and public sector in India, what is the proportion of the private sector in, or the share of private sector in building, shipbuilding, and also that do the Indian private companies have the balance sheets required to manage such scale of shipbuilding?
So, in terms of the share, in terms of shipbuilding capacity, it is heavily skewed towards the public sector. I would think that the public sector would be over 50 to 60% of at a capacity level. Um, and some of these companies have fantastic facilities. They're very well run companies. They've got some extremely committed and dedicated individuals running them all throughout. And they're doing a fantastic job in terms of particularly servicing India's defense needs. And some of them have developed a very good reputation globally for servicing the needs of commercial clients. Particularly if you see a company like Cochin Shipyard has a tremendous track record in exporting commercial ships. Now, to the next part of your question, which is whether the private sector has a balance sheet. This is an issue that needs to be addressed because shipbuilding contracts typically take, uh, I mean, at least even moderately ambitious shipbuilding contracts take require 2 years at least for the delivery of the first ship. Okay. And so you're talking about project management, and the ships tend to come in series very often. So somebody may place an order for 4 ships, 8 ships, 6 ships, 12 ships, depends. And there are these whole issues of stage payments. You get some amount of money during contract signing, and as you hit certain milestones, some amount of money comes in. But because of duration of the contract for the delivery, every time an advance is given, a refundment bank guarantee has to be provided back to the buyer. In India, unfortunately, the refundment guarantees are provided by the banks on the strength of the company's balance sheets rather than on the strength of the company's future cash flows. Most industrial countries and central banks of many of the industrial countries would be a lot more flexible to allow for the financing to be derived from future cash flows, or what you call project based finance. In India, it's balance sheet based finance. The balance sheet based financing regulations within India is one of the things that, unless addressed, will hold back India's potential. Because new companies, new entrepreneurs, new facilities coming up to be financed on the back of the balance sheet is not going to be sufficient for the type of demand that is there. If India is ambitious about becoming a country that is contributing 10% of the global supply of ships, that means it needs to take large orders, it needs to take high value orders. And to finance and build high value orders, it just cannot be done through a system of balance sheet lending. It needs to be done on the system of project based lending or cash flow based lending. You're talking about an industry where your margins it's very globally competitive, so your margins are not huge. 10% margin on a shipbuilding contract is unheard of. Typically they tend to be 5, 6, 7%. That's the nature of the global competitive landscape. So it would always be difficult for a shipyard, even though it's fully capable of doing a very, very ambitious high value project, to be able to provide a refundment bank guarantee based on balance sheet funding.
I guess the entire maritime enabling framework seems to be coincidentally coming together. You have these big deep sea ports, the one in Venginum and the one which Adanis are putting up in Maharashtra. So, and then you have these emphasis on small ports and now shipbuilding. So somehow there seems to be a happy convergence of circumstances, right?
Yeah, and it is necessary. You're developing the entire maritime sector. You develop the ports, you develop shipping, you develop shipbuilding, you develop ship repair. And even within this, you develop different grades of it. Ports, you don't just develop deep water ports, you're also developing a lot of jetties, smaller jetties by the rivers. It's very important. Ports, you're not just focusing on products, you're focusing on tanks, you're looking at cruise terminals, you're doing a lot of work over there. I think what is important is to realize at what level is a degree of specialization important. And again, here I will talk about the shipbuilding side. It is, if India does specialize in certain types of vessels or certain product ranges, it gets a lot more advantages because you get a lot more bigger ecosystem developing around that. That really drives a lot of efficiencies and productivities and skill sets. So, but that's something that we will need to figure out, I would say, more organically and through the play of market forces in terms of where do we specialize. If tomorrow we decide that next year I want to focus on specializing in products that compete with Korea, it's not going to work. India will never be cost competitive to Korea for gas carriers, according to me, for at least 5 to 6 years, just because of the skill sets required, and the entire ecosystem required towards that. It's going to take a lot of time, but it has to be a consistent effort that moves towards a particular direction.
In the last 7 decades, India could grow its share in global shipbuilding capability to only 1.2%.
Yes.
In the last 2 years, the government has taken corrective steps to fix this gap. Now, it wants to grow its share tenfold in the next 10 years. According to Arjun Chowgule, this task is huge but not insurmountable. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to StratNewsGlobal.Tech on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And please do share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us. I'm available on Twitter at Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.